It may surprise you to hear that your mild-mannered, easygoing deacon has a temper. Well, at least I used to. In my youth, I was quite impatient, and I often exploded in tirades that would no doubt make a bishop blanch. But I came by my temper honestly. I inherited it from my first car. The automobile in question was a 1964 Volkswagen Squareback with wooden bumpers, a jury-rigged starter button on the dashboard, and an add-in 8-track tape player that was prone to tax the 6-volt electrical system. The car was a thing of wonder. Each time I got in it, I wondered if it would start. It was the most I could afford at the time, at $250, because when I was making $2 an hour after school and on Saturdays. My girlfriend's little sisters called it the Slurpy Turtle. Don't ask me why. Maybe something to do with its speed. In the few years that I drove the Turtle, I perfected what my best friend called the jump start. Now that's probably not what you're thinking of as a traditional jump start with jumper cables and batteries. You see, I had a 6-volt battery, and everybody else in the world had a 12-volt. So cables were seldom an option for my dead battery. The jump start, rather, I perfected was to put the car in neutral, to stand in the open driver's side door and push the car to get it rolling. Then I would jump into the seat, stomp the pedal, throw the stick shift into first, and pop the clutch. The engine, forced to turn over by the momentum of the rolling vehicle in gear, would usually cough into life. The maneuver was also known as a bump start. and that's why I had wooden bumpers. But that's another story. Needless to say, I frequently found cause to become angry at the unreliable nature of my ride. One cold winter morning, I kicked the front left tire so hard, I broke my right big toe. I guess that showed that marvel of German engineering who was boss. So, yes, I have been acquainted with anger and sometimes uncontrollable expressions of frustration brought on by it. And it would be easy to tell you that this is what we read about in today's gospel reading from John. You've heard the story. Jesus entered the temple in Jerusalem and saw all of the people selling sheep and cattle and doves for sacrifice, and the money changers were there ready to convert the proffered coin into a currency more acceptable to God. And Jesus sort of lost it, turning over the money tables, driving the animals out from the courtyard, and generally wreaking havoc. He told them, "Take these things out of here. Stop making my Father's house a marketplace." And I always assume that the shock and surprise of seeing the spectacle is what made Jesus sort of flip out. But that really can't be what was happening there. I mean, think about it. Jesus had been to the temple in Jerusalem as a child with Mary and Joseph. He was a devout Jew, and surely he had seen the marketplace in the temple courtyard. The purchase of animals for the sacrifice and conversion of money to temple coin were practices known to every good Jew. It was business as usual. So why Jesus' violent response? Why the effort to discommode the sellers and the money changers? Why, if Jesus wasn't righteously indignant, what was the purpose of his angry exhibition? I think Jesus went to the temple that day just looking for trouble. He was looking to shake things up. And he used his frustration and his anger to empower him to make a point. This is not a place of business. This is God the Father's house. God my Father's house. The upsetting of the tables and the driving out of the animals was Jesus' way of saying, no more business as usual. It's time for something new. And he hinted at what that new thing would be. He said, destroy this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up. Of course, Jesus was speaking of his death and resurrection, and of the new deal that was coming, the new covenant with God. He wanted people to understand that the kingdom of heaven had come near. It was here, and it was no longer time for business as usual. Christ had come to make all things new. Business as usual was no longer going to suffice. And it doesn't, and it won't. Once more, Jesus showed us the way in overturning the tables of business as usual. And he calls us to do the same for ourselves. We too, from time to time, need to overturn the tables of rote and routine in our lives. Re-examine our methods and our motives and re-establish our true path to God. Because it's just so easy to fall into business as usual, doing the same thing in the same way until we've forgotten why we're doing it at all. Sometimes I feel like Jesus comes to us with the sole purpose of jump-starting, if you will, our true selves. He'll push us when we don't want to start. And once we're rolling, he'll jump on board and help us to roar to life. He comes in with attention-getting, deliberate acts, intent on clearing our minds and hearts of the proverbial money changers and animal sellers. He deliberately overturns the tables of comfortable thought and rutted habit to shock us from business as usual. And when he does, it might take the form of tragedy, or trauma, or terror. Or it might be help, holiness, or healing. But whatever the manifestation of Christ's assault on our business as usual, it is intended to arrest our attention and to give us pause. And when business as usual ceases, change can occur. Our lives, our relationships, our love can all be made anew. And for that, thanks be to God.